Life unfolds from these two purposes. Xiafeng. Edited by Kayer. Life unfolds from two purposes. The first purpose is to make life happy, joyous, free, and blessed. The second is to allow life to extend and develop into a higher space. In order to make life happy, joyous, free, and blessed, we must first differentiate between those factors which do not get in life's way of obtaining those objectives and those that do. Which factors do not keep us from being happy? Thriving grass, beautiful flowers, gurgling streams, surging rivers, free-flying birds, the ever-changing clouds, the sun and the moon, the stars above and the stones below, the earth, and so on. The vast majority of phenomena of nature do not keep us from being happy. Pure friendship, sweet love, and selfless family affection do not keep us from being happy. Hard work, plain living with collective games, sound sleep, and so on do not keep us from being happy. Which ones do keep us from being happy? Chaotic disorder, jealousy, greed, quarreling and fighting, jostling against each other, paranoia and suspicions, imposing upon others, suppression and revenge, making trouble out of nothing, being capricious, unfaithfulness, deliberately showing off and other falsehoods, and wicked and ugly things keep us from being happy. Which factors do not keep us from being joyous? Learning, laboring, working, and resting do not keep us from joy. Communicating, researching, exploring, and adventures do not keep us from having joy either. Appreciation, praise, encouragement, and mutual aid do not keep us from having joy, nor do eating, drinking, exercising, or going out. Which ones do keep us from being joyous? Repression and humiliation of the human nature, dissatisfaction with the status quo, the endless pursuit of desires, the limiting and denial of our fundamental freedoms, the denunciation of human dignity, the lack of privacy, damage to our minds and bodies, and other factors keep us apart from experiencing our joy. Which factors do not keep us from being free? Nature does not restrict our freedom, nor does the greatest creator constrain it either. Difficulties and setbacks do not shackle us, and suffering and hardships do not interfere with our freedom either. Which ones do keep us from being free? It is the families, religions, political parties, and states that bind our freedoms. It is the moral preachment, all the repressions of the mind, the limitations of the five elements of space and time, the requirements to have ignorant opinions, our debts and favors, all the possessions, the frame and edge of the box section of the circle, and so on that keep us from being free. Which factors do not hinder us from being blessed? Pleasurable situations and sincere content in life make us feel blessed. Yearning for beautiful things and the celestial world make us feel blessed. Being able to freely enjoy tranquility without interference makes us feel blessed. Being able to play, chat, flirt, and drink refreshing water make us feel blessed. Appreciating the beauty of things and feeling grateful make us feel blessed. Which ones do interfere with our experiencing blessing? It is the discontented psychology, the jealousy and resentful emotions, the dissatisfied thinking of reality out of time, the persistence of people, events, objects, ideas, the attitude of giving up the present to blindly pursue results, the anxiety caused by excessive possession, the contradiction between the ideal and the reality, and other factors that hinder our blessing. The pursuits of happiness, joy, freedom, and blessing are perfectly justified rights, and leading such a life is the wish of the greatest creator and is always a paramount goal of life. Planning life and understanding life around this goal is in accordance with the way of the greatest creator. Therefore, under the principles of reverence to the greatest creator, reverence to nature, and reverence to life, any outlook on life, morality, values, means, and ways that can make our lives happy, joyous, free, and blessed are both proper and acceptable, but any outlook that hinders them are wrong and are unacceptable. In this way, our lives are clear, and we will always distinguish truth from falseness in everything, and we will enjoy them without regrets. The other purpose of life is to extend life to a higher level of space. Life is short, like a colt crossing the river. Centuries pass in the blink of an eye. If we are not sustained with a more ambitious ideal, if we do not aspire and pursue the celestial world, then we will be likely to lead befuddled lives, to commit sins, to become disillusioned and frustrated with the mortal world, will be prone to wander helplessly and grow dread, and end up going from bad to worse and unable to rise up after we fall. Therefore, when we go on self-refinement and self-cultivation and explore the mysteries of time, space, and life, we should also be moving toward heaven. In guiding us to trek and climb to the highest realm of life and life, Life Achanyuan is essentially discussing centering around these two purposes. If our lives center on these two objectives, then we will feel clear-minded and enlightened and the cloud will be lifted.
人生来无罪，
Man is not born of original sin. Xie Feng. February 10, 2008. Translated by Transin and edited by Kayer. Is nature good or evil? This controversial issue, which has been debated for thousands of years, finally gets answered correctly from Life Achanyuan. Good and evil are not the properties of nature, but are determined by material logic. In other words, when the material content is achieved through the content of consciousness, there will be the distinction between good and evil. Chenkuan Buddha of Life Achanyuan said this: "There is no right or wrong or good or evil on the level of consciousness. Consciousness only reflects the results achieved by material logic. Right or wrong and good or evil is determined by material logic. Meeting the material logic that creates the totality is right and good. Destroying the material logic that creates totality is wrong and evil. Therefore, from the point of view of pure consciousness on that level, there is no right or wrong. However, if consciousness appears and uses the content of consciousness to achieve material content, then the consciousness can be right or wrong and good or evil, which is determined by the material logic that achieves the content. For example, the information stored in a computer is binary, whether good or bad. It does not have a right or wrong, or good or evil nature. The right or wrong and good or evil is the result of the application of the information on a physical level. Likewise, scientific principles can improve the lives of people, but can also manufacture weapons to destruct human life. Similarly, on the consciousness level of the universe, that is, alaya consciousness, there is neither right and wrong nor good and evil. The consciousness of the universe only truthfully records the data of material cycle, data of life's consciousness, and activities in the universe. The right or wrong and good or evil of the universe is determined by individual consciousness of life. And the individual consciousness that decides the good or evil is determined by the application of the consciousness of life on material logic. And the right or wrong and good or evil that reflects the application of material logic is determined by the totality of the material cycle. As a result, both arguments of nature is evil and nature is good are wrong. Well, what does Life Achanyuan say on the issue of whether we are born into sin or not? We are not born as such. Sin is the result of the incomplete and imperfect social operating mechanisms of human society, and is not innate. The root causes of the suffering of human societies for thousands of years lies not with sin, but with the imperfect operating mechanism of human society. If the operating mechanism is complete and perfect, people will not sin, but if the operating mechanism is not good, people may sin. Let's examine whether our conclusion is correct or not. Chenkuan Buddha has given us the following example. 6 people live in an apartment with only one toilet, so the use of the toilet becomes a problem which leads to conflicts with unpleasant results. Sin thus comes along. If the conflicts due to the unreasonable limitation of the toilet are resolved, say by building a second toilet, then they will be lessened, and if we built a third toilet, the conflicts would be minimized even more and the so-called sins would not arise. Therefore, the sin caused by toilet use was not innate, but was from the restrictive design structure of the apartment. If we compare sin to flies, we have to ask where flies come from. If we go to a place with a clean and beautiful environment, we see hardly any of them, but if we go to a relatively dirty and messy environment, we will see many flies. This is true. Actions speak louder than words. The fact has proven that flies do not come from nowhere but from unclean environments. In Chinese history, there were many instances of peasant uprisings, including the revolution of Chinese workers and peasants under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. What led to that? Did the peasants and workers naturally want to revolt and rebel? Absolutely not. Uprisings and revolutions are caused by bad social operating mechanisms. If the social operating mechanisms are good, especially if the distribution of the means of production is reasonable, there will not be any rebellions or revolutions. The corruption in the Singapore government is less than in the Chinese government. Could it be that Chinese officials have innately corrupt hearts?
No.
There is something wrong with the government's operating mechanism. There is anger and there are conflicts between wives and husbands, and sometimes there are the phenomena of affairs outside of marriage or bigamy and so on. Could it be that people are born to be angry and to have conflicts with each other?
No.
They are the results of the survival mechanism, marriage mechanism, and family mechanism. If there were no marriage, then there would be no family operating mechanism, and these phenomena could have been avoided. The world's population is now reaching 6.8 billion, right? This enormous population is drastically depleting our natural resources. The pollution of air, water, and all the natural resources on Earth is a testament to our overpopulation. Fierce competition and a series of overt and covert conflicts result, upsetting people both day and night. What are the reasons? The reasons are because there is something wrong with the social operating systems. It is not that people are sinned, not at all. In short, man is not born sinned. There is the saying of forcing young girls of good families to prostitute themselves and forcing boys to join the rebels. Who forces? It is the social operating mechanism that forces. As I have said before, the core crisis of mankind is the crisis of the soul. Well then, I am now saying that man is not born from sin. The sin is caused by bad social operating mechanisms. Are they contradictory? Are the Chanyuan values themselves creating paradoxes? No and no. Good social operating mechanisms need to be built by people with beautiful souls. Without beautiful souls, good social operating mechanisms can never be built, so the construction of the soul is the first requirement, but beautiful souls are not enough. We must construct a good social operating mechanism with beautiful souls. Otherwise, the beautiful souls will not be sustained for very long. This is more like the love between men and women. At first, everything goes fine, but if they do not build operating mechanisms to reinforce their original intentions, conflicts will soon develop which will either lead to their breaking up or to their struggling in pain for a lifetime. All religions, including Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, and others, have problems on establishing good social operating mechanisms. All the various cultivation groups, including the Indian ones, the Chinese ones, recent spiritual practice groups in the West, and others have ignored the establishment and construction of good social operating mechanisms. All political parties, especially the Communist Party organizations under the guidance of Marxism, are working hard to build better social operating mechanisms, but they neglect the greatest creator and the construction of the human soul. If political party organizations neglect the greatest creator and the human soul, they cannot build good social operating mechanisms, despite how hard they might try. If religious organizations ignore the building of good social operating mechanisms, then regardless of what they claim, whether it is the reappearance of Jesus, the reincarnation of Maitreya, deity celestial beings descending to earth, the reappearance of Dharmakakra, or threats such as impending catastrophes or the apocalypse, are useless and unhelpful to the world. If cults conjure up their spirits and deities, describe fortunes and disasters, and escapes from reality, lead befuddled lives as if drunk or in a dream, study sorcery and witchcraft, and play with spells, their members could never become celestial beings or Buddha or get away from the 6 worlds of reincarnation. For them to even re-emerge human, an afterlife would be very difficult. If you sinned in your previous life, then you have been punished. If your ancestors sinned, they had to bear it, but that has nothing to do with you. A king's children may not be kings or queens. A thief's children need not necessarily be thieves. Man is not born into sin. Whether we are sinned or not depends on whether we revere nature, revere life, revere the greatest creator, and whether we take on the way of the greatest creator.
怎样才算过了河？ 1.
What counts as having crossed the river? 1. Deform Buddha. December 3, 2006. Translated by Treasure and edited by Kayer. Why is it so hard to find soulmates in our lives? A soulmate is another self that resonates with our souls. Those with souls that do not completely resonate with ours cannot be our soulmates. Life becomes fulfilled when one finds their soulmate, but although this is the dream and expectation of most people, it is very rare that they actually find them. Why can we not find ours? Why is it so hard? There are thousands of reasons, but the core one is that we ourselves are not frank and honest with each other. Being with friends brings us joy. Being with soulmates brings us sedateness. Such beautiful feelings are really beyond description. Where is heaven? Heaven is the place where soulmates unite with each other. Soulmates do not possess each other, but enrich each other. Do not occupy each other, but allow full freedom for each other. Do not pillage each other, but give to each other. If both parties are willing to devote their lives to each other, then they are soulmates. The human world is only a mortal world because we cannot find our soulmates here. The place where there are no soulmates is the mortal world. The reason why the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world are paradises is because we can find group of soulmates there. Only by baring our souls, by baring ourselves completely, and by dedicating ourselves, can we find our soulmates. Darkness confuses people and makes them afraid. See nothing and understanding nothing. How can people be joyous and comfortable in darkness? People wrap themselves up, do not let outsiders see their inner worlds, watch and monitor others like thieves, and make others clear but keep themselves unclear. So how can they find a soulmate? Climbing to the sky is hard, but understanding oneself is even harder. Pursuing Tao is extremely hard, but facing one's true self is much harder. Being hypocritical is ugly and one of the symptoms of an imperfect life structure. Selfness is the chief criminal that causes our own and others' pain, and the greatest obstacle to the way of self-improvement. The greatest difference of self-improvement and self-cultivation between Life Genuine and other sects is that our emphasis is on the perfection of non-material life structures. As long as our structures are perfect, then we will acquire Tao and become celestials. From differences of perfection, we achieve differences of fruition. Other sects emphasize the training of skills, such as dredging meridians, alchemy, chanting mantras, reciting sutras, meditating, practicing pranayama, collecting qi, twin cultivation, and so on. The difference between Life Genuine and other sects such as Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism, and Islam is that Life Genuine follows two paths at the same time. One is the path of life, the other is the path of life. Not only do we enjoy our lives, but we also pursue a beautiful afterlife. Not only do we devote ourselves to humanity and to creating the Life Genuine era, but we also extend our lives into the higher level spaces of life. Other sects generally take no account of this life, but emphasize pursuing their future, afterlife. We are unique in that we do both. Obviously, without processes, there are no results. Without good processes, there are no good results. Those who do not feel joyous and happy as humans are absolutely unable to reach heaven. How could we enjoy heaven if we always wear sad faces? If there is no joy and happiness in our life structures, then how could we enjoy pleasure and happiness in heaven? If we cannot conduct ourselves well as humans, then how can we understand how to become celestial beings or attain Buddhahood? If we cannot learn courses of primary and middle school very well, then how can we study university courses well? The self-improvement and self-cultivation of Life Genuine is unique. Our aim is to let everyone always lead joyous and happy lives, to really laugh, to become children with wisdom, to forget what fear, worry, and death are, to be each other's soulmates, adore each other, dedicate ourselves to each other, and love each other until death. Finally, we will abandon and forget about ourselves completely, only devote ourselves, and become so foolish that we will not even care about what is in our own best interest. When we become this way, then we will have achieved our goal. Newcomers to Life Genuine might have the illusion that Chanyuan Celestials are silly children who lack profound wisdom and enjoy fun all day without self-cultivation. But the opposite is actually true. All Chanyuan Celestials have clear minds and brilliant wisdom. Our self-cultivation directs our core, and we attain magical powers naturally. Supreme self-cultivation is contained within human nature and nature. Gradually, our wisdom will exceed many masters and our non-material structures will approach those of super-celestial beings. This can be stated as, the pinnacle of good writing is nothing special, it is only being just right. The pinnacle of good character is nothing unusual, it is only being one's natural self. We need to climb mountains and cross rivers on our journey. The highest mountain is the self. We need to climb over the self. If we still maintain our present selves, then we cannot become celestial beings. Where are these rivers that need to be crossed? How many are there? And what counts as having crossed one? I will explain those things in the backyard of Life-Changyuan.
怎样才算过了河？
How can you count as having crossed the Rive? 2. Deform Buddha. December 3, 2006. There is no lack of beauty in nature. I firmly believe that there is no lack of beautiful souls among mankind. It is easy to discover the beauty of nature, but not so easy to discover the beauty of soul, because the beauty of nature is open and visible while the beauty of man's soul is hidden. This is something sad for mankind. To hide the beautiful soul from people's view is not only discrediting the creation of nature, but also does no good to mankind. There is beauty where there is love, be it emotional love or sexual love. However, have we exhibited our love? In the 1,000-year world of the heavenly kingdom, beauty exists everywhere, because in the 1,000-year world love is manifested freely, and no one would conceal their love. In the 10,000-year world, celestial beings are all naked and there is nothing to hide. In the celestial island continent of the Elysium world, super-celestial beings are all united as a whole. If we cannot love freely in the human world, won't we distort the beautiful soul? What are the maladies of the love in human world? Our love is too selfish. Once we fall in love with someone, we want to possess our lover and would not allow anyone else to be involved in any way. Fresh flowers are beautiful and everyone can enjoy them. But the beauty in human world is only private property. Once you have fallen in love and got married, you should no longer love anyone else and vice versa. You love like a coward. You love someone secretly but do not make it known to the person that you love. All wear a mask and love like a thief. Your words contradict what you think and your words are inconsistent with your actions. Anyone who displays his love will be sniffed at by hypocrites, although they themselves also want to love and be loved. Everyone is on guard against each other. Love is beautiful, but we love secretly and with fear, because we are afraid of being embarrassed and having our reputation tarnished. Countless obstacles have been placed for love, so that we do not have the courage to love although we have the desire. Once we have devoted or got the love, we have to endure the torture of spirit. The above 8 points constitute the great river that blocks our way to become celestial beings and enter the heavenly kingdom. If we cannot cross this river, we will not be able to enjoy the life in the heavenly kingdom. This is self-evident. Everyone can imagine what he will do if he is in charge of the heavenly kingdom. If everyone in the heavenly kingdom behaves as if they were in the human world, can the system of the heavenly kingdom be maintained? How can people go to the heavenly kingdom if they know nothing about it and conduct self-cultivation and self-refinement blindly without any direction or goal? Life-Changyuan is going to build a fairyland and wants everyone to conduct self-cultivation and self-refinement in imitation of the 1,000-year world. However, let's imagine, if we cannot cross the river, what shall become of us even if we come to live together? We may end up as another version of the human world or a snobbish group. Currently, the backyard of Life-Changyuan is a venue for self-cultivation and self-refinement. Here we only cultivate the consciousness. Are we capable of love even in this venue for cultivation of consciousness? What are we cultivating if we dare not even express our love? Why cannot we exhibit the beauty of our soul as much as we like? Why do we find it difficult to accept other people's display of their beauties? We all like honesty. Then why do we find it difficult to accept other people's honest display of their beauties? This is not our fault. The problem is that we have been bonded by the mistaken consciousness of mankind formed thousands of years ago. Habit is the second nature. This is like my experience of driving in Zimbabwe, where the cars run on the left side of the road. When I am back in China, I feel it extremely awkward and unnatural to drive on the right side. The problem does not lie with the left side habit or the right side driving, but with our failure to transform our consciousness. The angel of sexual love has come to help us to transform our consciousness. For fear that we may not be able to change our mindset and that we might be scared away, she is lecturing to us gently and lightly. Still, we are frightened out of our wits, as can be seen from the posts. People engaged in cultivation mostly like dabbling in the unfathomable magical arts and learning, but turn a blind eye to the trifle easily visible to our eyes. It seems to them that only discussion and exploration of the abstruse can count as self-cultivation and self-refinement, and that talk about trifles of life is not self-cultivation and self-refinement. This is a misunderstanding and mistake in self-cultivation and self-refinement. How well one has achieved in self-cultivation and self-refinement should not be judged according to what he says but according to what he has done. One has to put into practice what he has learned. If he cannot put what he has learned to actual use, he might as well not have learned it. We can judge by ourselves from the manifestations whether we have a perfect non-material structure of life. The perfect structure will be reflected in the perfect outer appearance. If the appearance is ugly, the structure must be flawed. The above 8 points form a turbulent river. Then how can you judge whether you have crossed the river? Be open and straightforward in love. Allow others to love what one loves. Do not feel jealousy, do not forcefully occupy, and do not possess. 2. What you think should be consistent with what you do. What you say should not contradict what you do. Do not do things under the counter, and do away with hypocrisy and affectation. 3. Be generous, magnanimous, refrain from stealing, robbing, and hurting others. Be brave to fully exhibit one's beauty of heart, and even to fully manifest one's figure. 5. Be brave to love and talk about one's feeling of emotional love and sexual love. 6. Be brave to love, but never force anything upon anyone. Never be impudent, never be obsequious, and never hurt others. 7. Love is an art. We should not be vulgar, we should exhibit our beauty in words and actions. We should not act like animals. 8. Imagine yourself to be the radiant and splendid light, the fragrant orchids, and the fairies and fairies in the heavenly kingdom. If you can meet the above 8 conditions, then you can be counted as having crossed the river. You can imagine, if someone has met the above 8 conditions, won't it be a pleasant matter to get along with him, her? If many people have achieved these conditions, won't we all feel happy and joyful, as if we were already in the heavenly kingdom? The above are my opinions. You can fully share with us your own feelings and opinions so that we can continue our discussions.
信任是蜂蜜，不信任是一把刀。
Trust is honey and mistrust is a dagger. Shui Feng.
7-6-2007.
Trust is a virtue. Trust creates the heavenly kingdom. Trust is a tremendous invisible power. Trust is the moral character of a simplistic and kind person. And trust is the natural instincts of children. Jesus Christ told us that unless you become children again, you will not be able to enter the kingdom of the greatest Creator, because the heavenly kingdom belongs to children. If we want to enter the back garden of the greatest Creator, then we must first cultivate our moral character of trust. Let's have a look at the power of trust. There is a story in the Chinese textbook of primary school, The Father and Son in the Earthquake, which runs like this. In 1989, a great earthquake struck Los Angeles in the United States, which rendered harm and injury to 300,000 people within less than 4 minutes. Amidst the chaos and ruins, a young father rushed to the school where his 7-year-old son was studying after getting his injured wife settled down. In front of him, the classroom building, which had been full of laughter of children, was now reduced to ruins. He was dumbfounded and all was blank in his head. He shouted, "Amanda, my son!" He knelt on the ground and burst out crying. Then he suddenly recalled the word he often told his son, "I will always be with you, no matter what happens." He got to his feet with great determination and headed directly to the ruins. He knew that his son's classroom was at the left back corner on the first floor. He ran to that place and began work. When he was cleaning up and dredging the area, a constant stream of parents of the children rushed to the site. Seeing the rubbish, they burst into tears and cried, "My son, my daughter!" After this, they left the school in despair. Some people came forward and took hold of this young father's hand, saying, "It is too late. They are already dead." Staring at these kind-hearted people, he asked, "Would you help me?" No one gave him an affirmative answer, so he lowered his head and continued digging. The captain of the fire brigade blocked him, saying, "It's too dangerous. fire and explosion may occur any time. Please leave this place. The father asked, Are you coming to help me? The policeman walked over and said, We know that you are very sad and cannot control yourself. But if you continue like this, it will be harmful to yourself and will also expose others to danger. Please go back home immediately. He asked the policeman instead, Are you coming to help me? People all shook their heads and left in sighs, thinking that this father had lost his mind over the loss of his child. This father only had one belief in his mind. My son is waiting for me. He continued digging for 8 hours, 12 hours, 24s, and 36 hours. No one stopped him. His face was covered with dust and his eyes were bloodshot. His clothes were tattered and stained with blood. When he had dug for 38 hours, he heard the voice of a child from below. Dad, is it you? It was his son. He shouted, Amanda, my son. Dad, is it really you? It's me, your dad, my son. I told my classmates to be brave. I told them as long as my dad is alive, he will come to save me, and we can all be saved, because you have told me, you will be with me whatever happens. How are you now? How many children are still alive? There are altogether 14 classmates here, all alive. We were in the corner of the classroom and have all been spared from the earthquake because the collapsed ceiling has formed a triangle and we were not hit. The father shouted, There are 14 children here, all alive. Please come and help them. People passing by made haste to help the children. 50 minutes later, a safe opening was created, and all the children were saved. This is a real story, which conveys to us a message. Faith and trust is a tremendous invisible power. With faith and trust in mind, we can survive disasters. The faith in this story can be seen in 2 sentences. One is said by the father, I will always be with you no matter what happens. The other is uttered by the child. As long as my dad is still alive, he will come to save me. The mutual trust between father and son has made it possible for them both to survive the disaster and become reunited. Just imagine if the father had no trust in the son, neither did the son in his father, then the hope for the survival of the 14 children would have been extremely slim. There was once a couple who loved each other deeply. One day when the wife discovered that her husband had stuffed some money into the hands of a pretty woman, she became suspicious of her husband, speculating that he had been unfaithful to her and the family. Ever since then, she had always been wary of him. Any of her husband's contact with women would arouse her suspicion, and she would throw a tantrum. And her husband came to be tired of all this, and ended their marriage with divorce. Who was the woman into whose hand the husband had stuffed money? You may ask. She was the husband's sister, because the wife stood very far from them and could not see clearly. All that she could make out was a woman standing with her husband. This is the tragedy caused by mistrust. The mistrust between men can do great damage to their affections and friendship for each other and hurt each other deeply. Mistrust will cause a rift in the perfect things and turn the paradise into a hell. During the spring and autumn and the Warring State period, there was a famous person called Wu Zishu who was a person of no trust. On his exile from the persecution of the king of Wu State, he was helped by an old fisherman who assisted him in crossing the river. After crossing the river, he was afraid that the fisherman might give him away, so he told him, If the pursuers came here, don't tell them about my whereabouts. Hearing this, the old fisherman uttered a sigh of grief. I feel compassion for the wrong you have been subjected to and helped you to cross the river, and yet is suspected by you. Then let me die to dispel your suspicion. With that, he killed himself by jumping into the river. Think for yourself, he had managed to save you at the risk of his own life, and yet you didn't trust him. How great is the humiliation to his noble character. A word of mistrust has caused the miserable death of a person. The mistrust between men is nothing less than a dagger that kills people without spilling blood. Wu Zishu was skeptical by nature. He had caused the death of the old fisherman, and during his subsequent fugitive life, he met with a yarn-washing woman who had sympathy with him and offered him food. This time, he once again was overwhelmed with mistrust and told the woman at his departure, Please don't tell others your encounter with me. After this, he left but looked back only to find that the woman had already killed herself by jumping into the river with a stone in her hands. During the middle of 1980s, I went to Xinhua bookstore in Lanzhou to buy some books. While I was at the door of the bookstore, a saleswoman barred my way, saying that she wanted to have a look at my bag. Instantly, I felt the indignation and humiliation of being wronged and ill-treated, and shed tears of misery. My goodness, she has taken me for a thief. Since childhood, my grandma and parents had told me, you should never take other people's things without permission, no matter how poor or how miserable you are. Why should I be doubted by anyone without any reason at all? Ever since, I have never been to the Xinhua bookstore in Lanzhou. 3 years ago, when I was shopping at a supermarket of the MT Pleasant Business Center in Harare, I handed at the checkout counter a stack of money about over 100,000 yuan to a black cashier. He put the money inside the cash register without counting it. I asked him, "Why don't you count it?" He answered, "I trust you." I was so moved and overjoyed at the time as if I was already in the heavenly kingdom. I would have hugged and kissed him. Ever since, I have a greater liking for Harare and the people there in Zimbabwe. I hope that people shall build the basic trust in each other. Only with trust can people build close relations with each other, and only with trust can people build a bright future. Ungrounded mistrust is a sharp, killing dagger. Please don't raise the butchering dagger recklessly.
要想没有痛苦改变人生观价值观，
In order to get rid of afflictions, change your outlook on life and value. Xiafeng. The sea of suffering is boundless. The sea of tribulation is caused by the wrong outlook on life and values. To get yourself away from the abyss of suffering, you must thoroughly change your wrong outlook on life and values. One cannot get rid of the worries and troubles of life by possessing more money, greater fame, higher position, or more beauties. On the contrary, such possessions can only add to one's distress, which will increase with the increase of your possession of these things. The traditional family is a sea of misery. The affliction between husband and wife originates from the mutual possession, the necessary results of which are afflictions. The ultimate way to eliminate distress is to give up possession and have nothing. Life is but a journey of life in the human world. The more one wants to possess, the more tiring the journey would be. To get rid of distresses, we must change the traditional outlook on life and values. Learn to be independent. Do not try to control others or have yourself controlled by other. Traditional culture always emphasizes mutual dependence. Actually, once man attempts to depend on something, he will try to manage and control the thing he depends upon, which will necessarily lead to afflictions. For example, if husband and wife always depend on each other, and always try to use their own outlook on life and values to transform the other party, and always attempt to have the other party act and behave according to their own wills, then both parties will be landed in a miserable situation. Therefore, man must learn to be independent. The earlier one becomes independent, the less distress one will suffer. Give up possession and believe in and rely on the home without marriage and family. According to traditional outlook on life, the more one possesses, the better one fares. As a result, man is always trying various means to amass possessions all his life. For this purpose, he is always kept on the run, attracted by the possession of money and property, fame and possession and lovers, and so on. In fact, possession is not a very good thing. Once one possesses something, he will become the slave of the thing that he possesses. In particular, man should not own each other. The outlook on life that you are mine is wrong, because the one that is possessed will feel that his liberty of life is restricted, and will as a result rebel consciously or unconsciously, which will necessarily lead to afflictions for both parties. Chanyuan Celestial already owns the home without marriage and family, which takes care of their food, clothing, shelter, transportation, life, health, and death. So they should love the home, rely on the home, and shift completely from the reliance on man to reliance on and belief in the home. Be responsible for yourself instead of complaining against others. I am doing this all for your good. This is a wrong outlook on life, which has actually added invisible burden of spirit and soul on people served, and also has brought many worries and unhappiness to oneself. Man should first be responsible for himself. Only if one is happy and pleasant himself can he bring happiness and pleasure to others. A person who is unhappy and unpleasant himself can never bring happiness and pleasure to others, no matter how sincerely he has been working for the good of others. If you feel that you are doing things for the good of others, then you are placing a hope and expectation on them. When they do not conform to your will in their actions and words, you will surely feel unbearable, miserable, resentful, and desperate. Facts have proved that one of the major sources of the misery of life is the outlook on life that one should first be responsible for others instead of for oneself. Do not dwell on the past, but look forward to the future. Whatever you have achieved in the past, it is only the track of your life and the arrangement of fate, and you cannot help it. The Bodhisattvas do not pride themselves on the merits and virtues. When you have spent your time and youth for others, they are also spending their time and youth for themselves. It is not a matter of who owes who. He will be plunged in endless suffering once a person indulges himself in the past, especially in the contributions he has made in the past, feeling that others and the society have let himself down and owe a lot to him. Celestial beings will make judgment of who is right and who is wrong, and Tao will naturally mete out punishment to faults and reward to merits. One will reap what he sows. As long as what we have done in the past is virtuous, then we will be richly rewarded by Tao. The past is already a thing of the past, no matter how glorious or miserable it has been. What we should do now is look forward to the future and chase the sun. This is required for a rational life. Love is unselfish devotion instead of expectation and exaction. The greatest creator is love by nature. Love is the source of freedom and happiness. If we have a heart of love, we should most willingly devote ourselves, without any regret or resentment. We should not place any hope on or attach any condition to the one we love. We should not regard love as an investment and expect repayment now or in the future from the one we love, or hope to get something out of the one we love. Actually, if we have realized that love is unselfish devotion and practice such kind of love, we will naturally be requited with love. If we are not repaid with love, we must make a check of ourselves to find out whether our love is pure and untainted. If we attempt to hold somebody in bondage in the name of love, or try to have the one we love do things according to our own wills, then we have misunderstood love. Man. It is easy to know and understand others but difficult to know and understand ourselves. When we are suffering the torture of distress for what we feel are right, we are actually having a distorted outlook on life and values. In this situation, complaining will not contribute to the solution of problems. To get out of misery and pain, one has to completely change his values and form a correct outlook on life and value. Only if one has established correct outlook on life and values, he will immediately feel the joy, happiness, freedom, and blessing, and will have a bright and splendid future.
埋怨是一支毒箭。
Complaint is a poisonous arrow. Xiafeng. When things are not going as one has expected or imagined, one will feel extremely uncomfortable and thus unleash implicitly or explicitly one's dissatisfaction upon the people who he or she thinks is the cause for his or her dissatisfaction, so as to express his or her grievances in anger. This feeling or behavior is called complaining. Complaint occurs mainly between husband and wife, between colleagues, partners, superiors and subordinates, between parents and children, between sisters and brothers, and between neighbors. If jealousy is a poison that hurts oneself, complaint is a poisonous arrow that hurts others. Complaints are one of the major causes for the tension, conflicts, contradictions, ruined relations, and violent fights between husband and wife, colleagues, partners, superiors, and subordinates, between parents and children, between sisters and brothers, and between neighbors. Complaint is the maltreatment of others' spirit and soul. The more civilized and better educated the people are, the more deeply they will be hurt. A person who is always the object of complaint cannot live a life of his own style. Even worse, such complaints can cause a distorted and abnormal mentality, inexplicable loss of temper, the loss of confidence in future, the dejection, the resentment and desperation, and even suicide. The complaints among relatives against each other can cause more severe injury to people's spirit and soul. The most frequent complaints occur between husband and wife. The endless babbling, nagging, and complaining can cast a shadow over the family, will severely affect the physical and spiritual well-being of family members, and especially will have adverse effect on children. Complaints have been the greatest cause for a member to run away from home. Here let me give a few examples of complaints. Why are you always so irrational? Can you let me alone and have some peace? Would you end up in trouble and distress of today if you had followed my advice? I have told you again and again, but you would never